Okay. All right. Good morning, everybody, and thank you for coming to our last training session. I'm sure you're all upset about that. You're going to have nothing to do Thursday mornings at 9 o'clock from now on. But thank you for coming. And we are recording. So let's just get started. And Carl, I'm going to transfer over to you. Take it away, Carl.
Okay, sounds good. I have muted everyone, and you are allowed to unmute yourself if you need to. But what we will do, as we've done for our last two sessions with great success, is if you have a comment or a question during the presentation, simply type it into the chat function, and Bernie Rydell will be monitoring that, and then he will interrupt and interact with me at the appropriate time, and we'll call upon people. However, a large part of today's training is going to be interactive. Last week's training was not very interactive. It was more informational. And today's training is going to kind of be the flip side of that coin, where we will have mostly conversation and discussion amongst ourselves. So Bernie and I practiced this. I'm going to switch between showing the PowerPoint on screen share and then flipping back to our current view so that we can have better conversation. When we go to that conversation part of it, I'm going to ask that you unmute yourselves, and that way only one person is unmuted at a time when we go to speak. And if you're having trouble with that, type in the chat function or wave your hand or something, and we'll do our best to make sure everyone's voices get heard. So on to our presentation. There we go. Okay, Bernie, can everyone see our see the slideshow now? Good. Okay. All right. So over the past 2 weeks, we have talked about how we will do our work in raising funds for the Rotary Foundation's philanthropic impact. We talked about our role as fundraisers is to help donors accomplish their goals. And we explained how there's a formal process that we can use in doing that work that will make our work more efficient, more successful, and ensure that we do it according to the best practice standards. We talked about the ethical importance of doing our work well. We talked about privacy rules and policies. We talked about the idea that inviting people to share is like inviting a good friend to a restaurant we like. We have to know the restaurant's menu, and we have to know the palate of our friend. And when we find that, we are happy to make the invitation to tell our friend about the restaurant, because we know they'll enjoy eating there as much as we do. And how philanthropy is similar. We need to know the philanthropic work that Rotary does, and we need to know what our friends enjoy doing philanthropically. And then when we find an alignment there, we can extend an invitation to join us in participating in that work. We talked about how leadership begins by example, and how all of us, in order to ask someone else to make the gift that's right for them, have to first make the gift that's right for us. And that doesn't mean the same gift type. It doesn't mean the same gift designation. It doesn't mean the same gift value, because we're all at different points in our lives. We all have different assets. We all have different goals, and we all have different philanthropic priorities. But when I make the gift that's right for me, that gives me the leadership authority, the moral authority, leadership, to ask someone else to make the gift that's right for them, even though my gift might have been an outright gift and I'm asking them to consider a bequest or vice versa. We talked about all of the good work that Rotary does, and we talked about the different ways that donors might choose to fund their gifts. And that takes us pretty much to where we're at today. In today's session, we're going to look at 3 different case studies of potential donors. These are composite characters that I've put together based upon donors I've worked with in Zone 33 over the years. And so I think these 3 different examples will be representative of the folks that you'll find in your sphere that you'll be working with. After we go through these case studies together, discussing each one, I'll encourage you to be thinking about, during this process, who you might know based on what we've already talked about in our previous 2 trainings and what we're going to talk about this morning, to identify 3 to 5 people who you think might be good candidates to invite to participate in the Rotary Foundation's work with a major gift. After the conclusion of this session, I'm going to ask you to email that list, not to everyone, but only to Bernie Rydell, and he will then form a clearinghouse to make sure that we don't have multiple people talking to the same person. If you're uncomfortable sharing names more than that, talk to Bernie personally and kind of discuss your situation with him. And Bernie will then kind of be the keeper of the master list. And the only people on our team who will have access to that master list as to who everyone in the whole campaign is Bernie and myself. And after Bernie compiles that list to make sure there's no duplicates, he'll give you the green light to go ahead. After that, you will also be getting an email that has a link to my schedule, and Bernie and I are working out the logistics of how to do this. And at that point in time, you'll be able to use that link to access my schedule to schedule a phone call just between you and me. And we can, on that phone call, talk about your own gift. And we can also, if that's your situation, I know some of you have already made your gift, but if you haven't made your gift yet, we can talk about that. And we can also talk about your prospects and develop a plan and figure out any support, any questions, any last minute ideas. You know, we can each have an opportunity for one-on-one personal conversation about concerns or ideas that are unique to you. Then we'll be off to the races. So that's our overview of what we're going to do today and what our next steps will be. Now let's look at our first case study. This gentleman in this case study is Don. He's 70 years old. He's been a Rotarian for many years, and he's always given small gifts to the Rotary Foundation. Excuse me. And he has become a level 1 major donor over time. He's a Paul Harris Fellow and a level 1 major donor. He always wears his lapel pins, and he prides himself on having perfect attendance. He's a retired insurance agent and has 2 adult sons who are both successful in business. They live in other states with families of their own. John and his wife Judy enjoy traveling to visit their grandkids on holidays and frequently travel to interesting destinations around the globe as tourists. So does this sound like someone you might know or might have in your Rotary Club? I'm guessing this is probably, we're all nodding our heads that in our Rotary experiences, we probably know several people who would remind us of John in this case study. So thinking about John as a potential donor, we want to talk about 3 different metrics as they relate to him. We talked about in our first session how every donor has 3 things in common. They have linkage, which means connection to the charity, in this case, the Rotary Foundation. They have an interest in the philanthropic work that the charity does, in this case, one of the many things that Rotary does to make the world better. And they have ability, in this case, the financial capacity to make some sort of gift of $10,000 or more, either outright, a bequest, or via a life income agreement. So thinking about John, we want to think about what his linkage is, what his interest is, and what his ability is. Remembering linkage is connection not just to Rotary itself, although that's certainly part of it, but in our case, also the Rotary Foundation, because we do know sometimes donors might have high linkage to Rotary as a club, but don't know too much about the foundation. And so we want to think about linkage in both of those terms here. So I am now going to stop screen sharing. I think that's how I do that. Let's see. There we go. Okay. All right. I have now stopped my screen sharing, and it looks like I also stopped my video. There we go. Okay. So thinking about John in terms of our linkage, were there anything in his little bio there that jumped out at you that would make you think about linkage for him? And if so, would you say he has linkage of high, medium, or low? You know, I think since I can see everybody here, if you think he has high linkage, raise your hand. It's a good number of people. Okay. How about medium linkage? A few there. Great. Okay. And how about low linkage? Low linkage. I don't see anyone with low linkage. So I think everyone on the call kind of concurs that he has either high or medium linkage. What in his profile made you decide the way you did? And if you just want to unmute yourself and share that, we'll see how that works here.
Okay, I'll go. One, he wears his pin all the time. That's a good sign. Two, he's interested in 100% attendance, which tells you a little bit more about his interest in Rotary. So those are the two main things.
Thank you, Lou. Yeah, so he wears his pin and he attends 100% attendance for many years, and we know that's a commitment. Robert.
He travels, and it tells me that he has an interest in foreign lands and foreign people, and he understands what the needs would be in other parts of the world.
Great point. Would you say that's more on the linkage side or the interest side?
Interest side, yeah.
I think that's on interest too. One thing we run into with Rotary a lot, you know, Rotary is Rotary International, and we've all run into donors who don't like the idea of doing international work as much as other donors do. And so when we run into someone who likes international work, we are a great opportunity for them because Rotary is an international entity and allows donors to have international philanthropic impact without leaving their hometown. And that's really powerful for people who value that. So when we see someone like that, that's a good sign. What else on linkage? Anything else on linkage for John?
Well, he's already a major donor. He's made a commitment. He understands the needs of the foundation.
Great. Yeah, so he's already given something, right? And that's, I think, the case for many of the donors that we'll be identifying for this campaign. Very rarely will someone's first ever gift to the Rotary Foundation be a major gift. Usually we give a little bit, and we build our linkage and we build our interest, and over time our ability grows, and then we make our major gift or our planned gift. And so you see with him, he's got a steady history of giving. That's a good sign. Ione, did you have something on linkage?
I think, if my memory serves me right, he's a Paul Harris Fellow also, isn't he?
That's right.
So he's giving every year, and I think that indicates a level of commitment that's important.
Yes. When we're looking at giving patterns, a small, steady giving stream is more indicative of a good prospect than an occasional large gift. Usually, if somebody really cares about the foundation, they're going to give every year. They're going to be one of those every Rotarian, every year donors. They're going to be Paul Harris Society. Paula.
I think I'm correct in here, or sort of correct. In most of our clubs, it's an expectation that a member is a sustaining member. And so I'm wondering, in that case, how important is it to look at the Paul Harris Society?
Great question. And yes, so sometimes donor history reports can be a little unhelpful when you look at giving patterns, and that's where it's crucial to know the local context. For instance, my club puts on $25 a quarter on our dues. And so pretty much everybody in my club has $100 a year going to the Rotary Foundation. Most of them probably don't even know it. And so if you look at someone's giving record there, does that really mean that they have made a conscious choice because they love the Rotary Foundation and know about it? No. Probably not. It just means they paid the invoice. Mm-hmm. And you need to know that local history to be able to gauge whether or not that giving record indicates a choice, a conscious choice or not. Certainly it's still good, and it's still good to see, and it gives us an opportunity to start a conversation with a word of gratitude. I've looked at your donor record, and you've given to the foundation every year since you've been a Rotarian. That's wonderful. Thank you. You really care about the work Rotary does. Let me tell you more about it, or let me ask you what about Rotary that you like so much. And it can start us off on a good note because it lets us express appreciation for their participation. But you're absolutely right. Some of the smaller gifts that might just be an expectation or on a dues invoice or something might not be that indicative of a choice. But the Paul Harris Society certainly is. And the Paul Harris Society is also a big enough gift that people generally make they think about it. They'll give the $100 because it was asked of them at the club meeting. They probably don't commit to give $1,000 every year as long as they're able, without actually wanting to really make a difference. It's a little higher level of commitment. And so those certainly are good prospects.
Carl, will we have access to the list of Paul Harris Society members?
Yeah, that is a public list. You
Oh,
do.
okay.
Yeah, the members of the Paul Harris Society. When we're talking one-on-one in our phone calls, that's when I will share the donor history information if it's relevant to our conversation. As we talked about in our other session there, according to our privacy policies, and if it's relevant to our conversation. So that might come up in a one-on-one meeting with you about your prospects, if that's key to our conversation there too. Linkage for John, the only thing I'll say there is his linkage, what we can measure, is really strong to Rotary as an entity, as a club. And we probably need to do a little bit of asking about the foundation with him too, because he's given to the foundation, so he's got some good linkage there. He's become a major donor, so he's probably had a crystal presented to him, and he's probably gotten his pin presented, and that's all good. So we're on good shape there. Let's move on to interest. Of all the things Rotary does, what makes us rate John on interest? So who would rate John as high interest? If you want to rate him as high, raise your hand. Okay. How about medium interest? Anyone want to rate low interest? Okay. I didn't see any for low. I know some people don't have their video on, so it's hard to see that.
Carl?
Yes.
I'm sort of reluctant to rate him at all on interest because from the little bio,
Right.
he doesn't tell us much at all. The only thing that did kind of reach out was what Bob already mentioned, that is his international travel. It gives you a certain perspective. But it's really hard to measure his interest, particularly in the foundation, until you have a conversation.
Yeah, great. It's great observation, Lou. Someone mentioned, I think it was Ione and maybe someone else as well, that he's given over the years. And we know that every donor has to have some measure of interest to make gifts. So we know there's some interest. He's not opposed to the mission. If he was opposed to the mission, he wouldn't have given. So we know there's some interest, but it's really hard to know from that bio what that might be. And I think that's true for a lot of our Rotary friends too. We know what we know about them, what we knew about John in that bio. We might have friends in Rotary and we don't know much beyond that on their interest. And so as Lou mentioned, that's a great conversation to have with them. And a great way to start that is to say something like, in this case, John, you're a major donor. You've been in Rotary for years. You've got perfect attendance. You have heard many presentations about the foundation. You give to the foundation. Of all of the stuff the foundation does, what do you love most? What do you like about our Rotary Foundation? What excites you about our Rotary Foundation? Some language about that that's open-ended, that lets the donor then respond to that. And you'll see what he first comes up with. And that will let you know what his level of interest is, and maybe also his level of linkage too, based on what he says, what he knows. And that gives you a starting place in your cultivation plan. Remember, we said in our cultivation plan, the first point is to confirm the assumptions that we've made in the identification phase. So right now, we're looking at what we know about the prospect, and we're getting our assumptions in line. We're assuming his linkage is high. We're assuming there's some interest. And some of us said, yeah, I think it's high. Some of us said, I think it's medium. None of us said, I think it's low. And I think that's true. If it was low, he wouldn't be a major donor. So we have an assumption. And when we get into our cultivation plan, we want to have conversation with them to confirm those assumptions and to clarify those things. Interest also goes to all of the different things Rotary does. And so it's possible a donor might have an interest in something and they don't know Rotary does it. And so we might also, instead of just asking of all the things Rotary does, what do you like the most, ask open-ended questions about what are the biggest needs you see in the world today? Or of all the ways you can make a difference in the world, what's the one that excites you the most? What are you most passionate about? How would you like to improve the world? I use the magic wand question a lot when I'm meeting with a new donor. And I will say something like, if you had a magic wand and could change anything about the world, what would you change? And people in Rotary really want to make the world better. And they have wonderful answers. And many times they will give an answer that the Rotary Foundation is equipped to help them with. They want to build a more peaceful world and some iteration of that. We have our Peace Centers program. They want to ensure economic stability for others. We have our economic opportunities through our area of focus of community and economic development. They understand the importance of education. We do so much in education. Our legacy of the ambassadorial scholars and today our area of focus of Bell. They understand the importance of clean water and sanitation, maybe even now more than ever. We do so much in that area. They care about child and maternal health. We have that as our area of focus. Disease prevention and treatment, of course, polio remains our #1 priority. They like local and global things. They like making a difference in their own town and their own county. We have district grants for that. And so once we hear the donor articulate what they'd love to do, it's an opportunity for us then to tell them what Rotary is doing in that area, because they might really care about something and they don't even know that Rotary works in that area. And that's a fun opportunity too. And that again builds their interest and their linkage. They have the interest in the area, but they didn't have the linkage to know that Rotary's doing something about it or could do something about it. Great observations there on interest. You've mentioned his international travel. That's a very good sign. We've mentioned his frequent attendance, his wearing of his pin. Now let's move on to the third metric, the ability metric. Do we think that this gentleman probably has the ability to make a gift of $10,000 or more to the Rotary Foundation using any one of the gift vehicles that we've talked about in our training?
I would say that we don't know a lot about his ability, but if he does travel internationally, and it appears that he does this on a regular basis, that means he does have some funds available that he could divert to the foundation in some fashion.
Good,
This man is a
comment.
successful, this man is a successful retired insurance person with I believe it's two sons who are in distant cities who are also successful, which tells me that there aren't going to be as great a demands on him to help support his children and grandchildren going forward. International travel, you have to have money to do that and time to do that. So I think this gentleman has the ability certainly to make a major gift.
Anyone disagree? Anyone think he doesn't? I mean, I think we see a lot of concurrence there. And that's really all we need to know about ability is the box checked. We don't need to know the gift type. We don't really need to know even the gift amount. That will come out in conversation. When we talk with him, it will come out in conversation, his ability. He'll identify what he'd like to do. And we can, through our conversations, learn. Maybe he cares a lot about leaving a legacy for his kids and grandkids, and a named fund is really appealing to him. You know, he likes to go to all of the Rotary meetings and he likes to travel. Perhaps joining the Arch Clump Society would really be something that would be meaningful to him. Those are things that will come out in our conversations with him. We don't need to go into the conversation with a set agenda about what gift we want to ask him to make. We want that to come out of an evolving conversation with him. And that's important for many reasons, one of which is it's the best service to the donor, so you know you're really getting the donor to do what the donor wants to do. But most importantly, for a bottom dollar line, most of the time when we set our own goals, we often sell ourselves short. There have been many times when we've come in and thought, well, I'm going to ask for $10,000 because that's what this campaign is about. When that donor very well might have done 25 to do a named fund had we had a conversation about what was important to him instead of just saying $10,000, oftentimes you'll get what you ask for. And so we want to let the conversation grow naturally and see what kind of gift type comes about. This gentleman's a retired insurance person. He's 70 years old, so he's not that old to be retired. So we don't know how long he's been retired, but it's also reasonable to assume he might still have a considerable income coming in. He might be looking for some tax deductibility on his tax return. He might have some residual income coming in from his insurance work. And he might own some assets that he could use to fund a charitable gift with beyond just cash. If he's spent his career in insurance, it would not surprise me if he has some complicated investments. And having a thorough conversation with him so that he and his advisors could choose what asset is best might allow us to receive a bigger gift and be of better service to him as well. Additionally, someone else already mentioned his grown children are successful. He might not be looking to leave them money. They don't need that as much as he's looking to give a legacy, a philanthropic legacy for his family. And so setting up a named fund within the endowment, maybe something even multi-generational, where he gives some and his children give some. There's a lot of potential there that we don't want to shut the door on going into the conversation by saying, I want $10,000 cash on the barrelhead today, John. And so that's all great observations. Your observations about this donor were absolutely spot on. And I hope that thinking about this kind of composite character here has been helpful for you as you're thinking about your own list. Maybe you've got some people that are like John in your world. Any other comments about this donor before we move on to our second example? Okay, I don't see any. Bernie, anything in the chat window I need to know about? Nope, okay. Share screen again, PowerPoint slideshow. Okay. Let's see. There we go. Okay, now our next example is slightly different. Here we have Roger. Roger is 40 years old. He joined Rotary 3 years ago after being invited by a fellow business owner whose opinion Roger greatly respects. Roger owns a successful property management company and has a wife and a young son. Roger frequently talks about the importance of keeping his community vibrant and healthy, a place where his son can one day take over the business that he's now working hard to create. He likes finding other people who share that value in his Rotary Club, other productive citizens. He wears his Rotary pin proudly as an example of what is right in the world, and he wishes that people everywhere cared about making their community healthy and sustainable like he does, instead of looking for handouts from the government or a charity. Roger. All right, so a lot different than John. Move back to our view here. A lot different than our first donor, but also someone that we will run into in Rotary. Now, I know we're all trying in Rotary to get more members like Roger. You know, we're all doing this young professional drive and everything, but we do have some folks in our Rotary clubs who are like Roger. I've worked with him. It's a composite character. And he's just as much a Rotarian as John is, but he's a lot different than John. He's at a different stage of his life. He's got different assets, different goals. So thinking about Roger now, looking at him the same way we looked at John through linkage, interest, and ability, let's do our vote for linkage. Who would say that Roger's linkage is high? If you want to say high, raise your hand. Okay, how about medium? Say his linkage is medium. Very good. All right, hands down for medium and hands up for low. Who wants to say he has a low linkage? Okay, so what I see there is that we don't have any high votes. We have some medium and some low for linkage. And you know, for somebody who's been in Rotary 3 years, that makes a lot of sense, right? I mean, there's going to be a big difference in linkage between somebody who's been a lifelong Rotarian in their retirement years versus someone who just joined 3 years ago. Very good. Let's talk about linkage and why you chose to vote the way you did. Lou, I'm going to call on you because you started us off last time. I'm going to ask you to start us off again.
I was trying to hide. Well, I think that he, being a young professional and managing his own business in financial management and having young sons and emphasizing on productivity, I think the opportunity to talk to him about his linkage to Rotary is a good one. So that if his right now is medium or low, then just conversations with him about where does he see himself in Rotary? What does he expect from Rotary? How does Rotary help him in his community? How is his emphasis on productivity and productive citizens? How does that relate to Rotary? What can Rotary do for those things for him? So linkage-wise, medium to low, but there's a great opportunity to learn a lot more about him.
Thank you, Lou. Very good points. And you know, that's what this cultivation plan is, right? We identify where they're at, linkage, interest, ability. We confirm those assumptions through conversation, and then we work to raise the lowest of those 3 bars, because we know that the lowest of those bars function as ceilings, and the lowest of those 3 will cap the giving. And so when we raise the lowest of those 3 metrics, the giving rises to the new level of the lowest ceiling, and we work to constantly build that. And you developed a great way to build linkage through conversation. Absolutely. What else about linkage for Roger? Linkage to Rotary, linkage to the Rotary Foundation. There were some key things there about how he came to join Rotary. Pauline.
Well, someone he respected, a prominent business person, invited him to join. And at this point, he may not even have an understanding about the foundation. So while I ranked him low, I feel that there's a lot of potential. He's knowledgeable about finances. He has tools to start young and build high for the foundation. And those are the reasons I voted low, but I feel like he has a lot of potential.
Great comments. And you picked up on he joined Rotary because someone he respected invited him to join. And you can tell in this young man's bio that he values community, connection to others, being a part, and someone he respected vouchsafed for Rotary to him. And that means a lot for linkage. Sandy?
I also think he did say community vibrant, but he also, there's no international history of any kind. However, he did say he wants to keep his community vibrant without using handouts from the government or charity. So I could see that as a red flag, because Rotary is a charity and Rotary provides. So I don't know how you go about talking about that with somebody that doesn't want people to get handouts from the government or charity.
Let's talk about that under interest. Great observation, Sandy. Thank you for bringing that up. And when we get down to interest, we'll talk about that point a little more. On linkage, he also says he does wear his pin. You know, he wears it proudly. So he's proud to be a Rotarian. What he knows he likes, I'd say that's how I'd assess it. I'd say what he knows he likes, but after being a Rotarian for such a short period of time, he might not know that much. So linkage might be low to medium. I'd agree with that assessment. Let's move on to interest. And Sandy kind of brought us into that with her comments about him mentioning that he wants to make the world better. I'm going to try to show his, I'm going to try to share screen again here so we can look at this. Let's see, if we look down here, he says he likes finding other people who share that value in his Rotary Club. There's our linkage. And then he says he wishes people everywhere cared about making their community healthy and sustainable like he does his, instead of looking for handouts or help from charity. So when we're looking at interest there, what does that tell us about what his philanthropic interest might be? Any ideas about that?
I
Anything?
think right now he's interested in his local community and making contact with people locally that are productive and can support the community. I think that's his base and where we have to start, and get him to understand that foundation addresses people in the community. It addresses people in your area, in your state, as opposed to the global, and build on the global once we have a foundation set with this young man. I understand his point in not wanting to give away freebies or have people live on charity. However, it's different when you're helping to provide funds to build things or resolve disasters, help people get through that, feed them when necessary. I mean, I think he can see that need in his own community, and foundation can be built on that base. And I think he's got a lot of potential for the future.
Thank you. So something about his comment there, he wants to work with other people who want to build in their communities too. And he says, I wish everyone cared about their community like I care about mine. Well, isn't that exactly the model that Rotary uses? I work in my community and you work in your community, and together we accomplish more. So I'm up here in Raleigh and you are down there in South Carolina, and when we make our gifts to the annual fund, half of my DDF generated gift works here in the triangle, half of yours works there, and then the other half in the World Fund works together wherever we need it most, helping each other. And sometimes those World Fund dollars are going to help in South Carolina where you are at, and sometimes they're going to help in North Carolina where I am at, and sometimes they're going to help in Africa, and sometimes they're going to help in Asia, and sometimes in Europe. And people in those communities are working just like I am in mine in theirs. And so I think there's a great opportunity for our model of the way we do philanthropic impact at Rotary to resonate with him when we approach it from that. I'm working in my community, other Rotarians are working in theirs, and we work together. And I think that's something that would resonate with him. What about our area of focus of community and economic development? Anne's nodding her head.
Yeah.
Yeah, Ione, I saw you nod your head. That's something that struck his interest there.
That struck me. Yeah, that struck me because I think he might be the kind of person who would be interested in what I call foundational programs, like education, water. Those are certainly not giveaway. Those are not what a lot of people would consider giveaway type programs, but they build a foundation on which an economy and a community can grow. So those are the kinds of programs that may, and I think, actually all 6 areas of focus do that, but those in particular are, I think, are very foundational. And I think that those programs might appeal to him more.
What about, thank you, Ione. Yes, and what do you think if someone he trusted talked to him about Rotary's value of sustainability and how every one of our global grants has to have that sustainability component? There is nothing that Rotary does that is just a Band-Aid fix anymore. We take a sustainability approach to every one of our global grants. We work on building systems that will continue to make lives better year after year. You know, Anne could explain on some of the projects she's been on how they will have lasting impact. You know, those of you who have done a global grant could talk about what work you did on the sustainability side of that to ensure that you weren't just giving a handout, but that you were empowering people to succeed on their own through the resources that you've invested in their communities with Rotarian leaders in their communities. I think that message would resonate with this fellow. And also, we want to talk to him because there might be some interest there that we don't know. Like John, our first donor, we said, we don't know everything. We want to ask open-ended questions. Well, we want to ask this fellow some open-ended questions too, because he might come out with something. You know, you might find out, it's possible, you might find out that the only way he was able to go to college was because he got a scholarship. And you might then find out that he might really be interested in endowing a scholarship for your district through your Global Scholars. You might find that out. It wouldn't surprise me. You might not. But if we don't have the conversation, we'll never learn. And so we want to have those open-ended conversations. So we've got linkage, medium to low. We've got interest, some interest, question mark. Who would say high interest? Anyone want to vote for high? Medium interest? A couple? Low interest? A few? Okay, more than most of us there. So far, our lowest metric for this gentleman is interest. Okay. Let's talk about ability for him. Who would rate him as high ability? Anybody want to rate him as high ability? No. Medium ability? Anyone want to rate medium ability? Couple hands there for medium ability. Good. All right. Low ability? Want to rate low? See a lot of hands going up there for low ability. Okay. So now I want to pause and do a different vote. Looking at the next 30 years, which donor has the potential to give more money to the Rotary Foundation starting today and going 30 years into the future? John, who we rated before, or Roger, who we just rated now? Who has the most forward potential? If you think John over the next 30 years at age 70 could give more to the foundation, vote there. And if you think over the next 30 years, Roger could give more to the foundation, raise there. So when we look at the long ball approach, we don't want to leave Roger out. You're right in thinking that the level of the gift that might be made today might be higher from John because he's at a stage of his life where he can probably give more today. But if we take a longer approach and we look 30 years, 40 years, 50 years, 100 years into the future, we're going to be able to have more philanthropic impact with the younger donors starting early. And so if we have a conversation with Roger today and he makes a bequest of $10,000 or a bequest of $25,000, and that gift is properly stewarded, he's thanked for that, that builds his linkage, he will continue to grow his interest, and as his business grows, as he grows through life, his ability will probably also grow, and those gifts continue. If you want to look at it this way, at age 70, John, our first example, is only a level 1 major donor. Roger has probably the potential to become a level 1 major donor at age 40. He's getting quite a head start. And so we don't want to overlook the Rogers. It's a real easy temptation just to say, he's young, he's just starting in business, he's only been in Rotary a few years, he's got young kids, I'll get to him later. You know, we don't bother him now. Leave him alone for now and work on the Johns. But what we really want to do is work on both demographics. And their gift types are going to be different. And they might be smaller amounts. They might be a bequest instead of an outright gift. They might be a pledge. This donor very well might do a $10,000 pledge over 3 years, $3,333 a year. You don't know. He might also make an outright gift. He owns his own business. There's some tax consequences there. You don't know what that's about. You don't know how profitable that business is. It could be very profitable. And we learn that through conversation. But the main point I want to make is not to just write him off because we say he's young, has young children, and we think, oh, well, he's not ready for that. We'll wait till later. The other nonprofits in his life are doing that. So if we build a relationship with him now through Rotary and build that linkage up, when he gets to that point where he is at John's stage of life, when all the other nonprofits decide they're going to come knocking on the door, we will already have years and years and years of relationship with him. And we want to continue to stay in good relationship with him, 1 year at a time, one gift at a time. There are donors who I have started working with when they were like Roger, and now their kids are through college, and now they're able to give more. And if I'd have just waited until now to have that conversation, we would be nowhere near along the path we are, that we started early. Even if you had a conversation with him and he decided not to make a major gift now, but to join your Paul Harris Society, while that would not be a score for our $1 million dinner, that would be doing a lot for him as a fellow Rotarian, being of service to him and helping him accomplish his goals philanthropically, and also setting him on a path to future giving. And that would be a good thing for everybody. So he's in there because he's the demographic that we often overlook in our gift work. And I want to encourage you, don't overlook him. And sometimes you'll be surprised. We've closed on very large gifts from people in his demographic that stereotyping we might have overlooked. Anything else about Roger? Any comments about him before we move on to our third composite donor? Okay. Let me go back to share screen here. Okay. Okay, now this composite, this is our final one, is an example of donors that we're seeing more and more of in Rotary, and it's a husband and wife couple in Rotary. I'm sure you all are aware of many people in Rotary where both partners or spouses are Rotarians, and that presents a different dynamic to work with when only one of the people in the couple is a Rotarian. So here we have a couple aged 65 and 70. Jill joined Rotary 10 years ago when she was the principal of the local junior high. Her husband, Tim, joined 5 years ago when he retired from a career with IBM and needed a productive way to spend his free time. He was impressed with what he saw of Rotary from Jill's involvement. They belong to different clubs and both attend regularly, but don't have perfect attendance. They enjoy going to district events, especially banquets and events with hospitality rooms. They have volunteered in different positions over the years, always saying yes when asked. Jill was president of her club in 2008. Jim has held no office other than sergeant at arms in his club. They have no children and enjoy spending their free time volunteering. Jim serves on the board of a local nonprofit that helps people with disabilities get housing. Jill is involved with her church's choir, and they both enjoy taking short trips on their his and her Harley-Davidson motorcycles. A composite couple of Rotarians with some very interesting histories and lifestyle choices. So, looking at that couple, we want to think about them in terms of their linkage to Rotary and our Rotary Foundation. Who would link this couple with high linkage? Okay, we got a couple votes for high linkage. How about medium linkage? That seems to be the majority vote there. Anyone want to vote low linkage? Very good. Okay, what about this biography made you decide to vote the way you decided to vote as far as linkage goes?
Well, I can say I said hi, and the reason I said hi is they're involved in district events. They volunteer. She was a president. They're a board of nonprofits. They are involved with their church. So they do a lot with volunteering and charities. So that's why I think it's high.
Thank you, Sandy. And, being a club president is a good sign of linkage there. They do attend district things, which is probably more than the average Rotarian in a district does. So you've got that. They've been in Rotarians about a decade. You know, they're the kind of, many people join Rotary when they retire. And the man in that couple, he's kind of in that mindset. He joined Rotary when he retired. She joined Rotary when she was active in her profession, which is also a common way to join Rotary. So we have both entry paths to Rotary represented there. What else about linkage?
Carl.
Paula.
Yeah. First of all, thank you for this example. I had never thought about that. You're right. There are so many couples, and you painted a picture of people that came to my mind that probably would not have come to my mind had you not given this scenario.
Oh, the training has been successful then, Paula. Great.
Yeah, thank you. That was actually the last two were very good, but this one in particular. So thanks.
Yeah. So so we've got linkage there. Okay, very good. Something else about linkage that this dynamic brings up. When you have a married couple and only one is a Rotarian, you have to remember that a charitable gift conversation of significant size is always a family decision, or usually a family decision. Never say, you know, always, but is usually a family decision. And so if you have a situation where only one spouse is the Rotarian, but both spouses are making the charitable decision, you might have the situation where the one you know from Rotary has high linkage, high interest, but the other one doesn't. And so you have to develop a relationship with them as a couple to help them both come to the level of linkage and interest. And oftentimes that's a lot of what I do. The person I'm working with as the donor will say, will you meet with my husband and I, or will you meet with my wife and I? Because I want you to tell him or her about this. You can tell it better than I can, or they'll listen to you, or just, I want somebody else there to help me tell her or tell him. And so a lot of times we'll have to explain, you know, how Rotary does work in this area that they care about, because the Rotarian spouse knows it, but the non-Rotarian spouse doesn't. And so we have to bring that to parity. We have to bring that linkage and interest to parity. And that's an extra step in the cultivation process. In this case, you might have a quicker time with that since both are Rotarians. You might be able to start at a quicker place. They both get Rotary. They both choose to belong. They both understand things more. And so that's a helpful dynamic to us oftentimes. So great observations about linkage. How about interest? Who would rate their interest as high?
Oh.
How about medium for interest? Low for interest? Okay, that's an interesting vote. I'm curious, those of you who said high interest, what led you to vote that way?
I selected high because I feel that the thing they like to do the most is volunteer. And so they'll have an understanding of the type of work that Rotary can do with the monies that they have once they've left. There's someone else to carry on the volunteer effort after they've gone, if they leave a bequest, or to put the money to use right away. So they've chosen to not spend money on travel. They've chosen to continue to do good works by volunteering. And so that's why I thought it would be high.
Good observation. Okay, Ione?
Yeah, the other thing is a lot of people, when they retire, they get out of Rotary because they want to travel, they want to do other things. They don't want the obligations of Rotary, because it is an obligation. They are not perfect attenders anymore. It's probably because they are retired and they are out doing other things, but they are still involved in Rotary. And also, you know, what Pauline said, that volunteer work is very important to them. So I think the fact they stayed involved in Rotary, it's not for them, it's not professional development as it is for a lot of people. It might have started with the wife, that it was good for her professionally to be in Rotary. but she stayed in Rotary, and she enjoyed it enough that her husband joined when he retired. So I think that's pretty strong.
Very good. Something that's missing on their profile, everyone else has mentioned, they have no giving history to the foundation that we've mentioned. They've been in Rotary 10 years. It doesn't say they're even a Paul Harris Fellow. We'll want to think about that. That's something we want to look at when we're talking with them about that. We also don't know of all the things Rotary does, what they're interested in, right? Nothing in their profile really jumped out at us about that. But as you've mentioned, they care about volunteering. They're hard workers. It says in their profile, they've always said yes when asked. So it very well might be that their linkage to the foundation is what needs to be built up. And if they knew about the foundation's work and were asked to support it, that they very well might say yes. So good opportunities here and good observations. Going on to ability for this couple, who would rate their ability with a high? Who would rate it with a medium? And who would rate it with a low? I don't see any low ratings, at least I don't think I did.
Well, I raised my hand for low.
Oh, okay, why did you say low?
Because we don't really have an understanding of a giving history, or whether, you know, the types of income that they have. They didn't work in career fields where maybe they have an understanding of giving, vehicles and things like that. So I thought that would need the most work, explaining how they could participate. And maybe that's the wrong way to go about it, but that's what I did.
No, that very well could be. Thank you, Pauline. Sandy?
I think that we should go after them for a huge benefactor because they ride motorcycles.
There you go. All right, so we know. So, Lou, go ahead. Lou?
That's exactly what I was going to say. I'm thinking, okay, Carl stuck this thing in here about motorcycles for a reason. So I would definitely go after a big bequest or a benefactor, get the money nailed down in their will right away, because who knows what's going to happen to them. I don't want these something out over 10 years.
Lou, you know why I put that in there? It's because I have 3 different husband and wife couples I work with, and all 3 of those ride his and hers motorcycles. So it just, when I was making my composite, that just struck me. And so that's why that's in there. But you know, if they have his and her Harley Davidson motorcycles, that probably tells us something about ability, doesn't it? Probably tells us something. You also see under ability that they have no children. I see Eric's nodding his head there, and so is Robert. Several of you picked up on that. They're what the marketing people call DINKs, which is an acronym that stands for double income, no kids. And that's a demographic that traditionally has expendable income more than other demographics does. And so what you've got here is a couple that probably needs to think about some estate planning. We don't know that they have nephews and nieces. We don't know what they want to do, but it's very possible that there's room for some charitable giving in that estate planning portion of it. And that could be a really big gift potential for this couple, especially if they don't have other family members that they want to pass assets to. So we want to look at that. Sure, Robert?
The fact that they're bikers tells me that they enjoy the outdoors, they enjoy the environment. And so environmental protection, water sanitation, those types of things might appeal to them. I don't know ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, they also have other interests too. He sits on the board of a nonprofit. He retired from a career with IBM, which people tell me stands for I've been moved. And so you don't know where they've lived in the past either. And so it'd be interesting to talk with him about that and what he's seen in his career. Now, what profession did she retire from? I know we don't have the thing up there to see it. It's hard when.
I think it was in education, wasn't it?
That's right. She's a retired school principal. So might she have some interest in basic education and literacy? Might she understand the value of scholarships? Might she understand the value of helping children become literate? You know, probably so. If she dedicated her whole, we know people don't go into the education field to get rich. They go into it because they care about making the world better by helping other people get an education so they can reach their full potential. And the fact that she stayed in that field her entire career and retired from it as a principal of a junior high, she got time out of purgatory for that. And so we want to talk with her about what philanthropic goals she might have as they relate to that. She's done that with her life. What about a legacy through Rotary to continue basic education and literacy work with a bequest? There's some interest there, I think, that we can get from her profession. And we don't know about what he did for IBM. So that might be something to learn, and we might learn something there too. As far as what gift type to ask for, we don't know enough from this sketch to know going in. We want to have a conversation about that. And it could be a cash gift, or it could be a bequest, or it could be both. Also, they're both over aged 50, and so they're candidates for life income agreements. That might be something that's appealing to them too. Chances are, no one's talked to them about those things yet, because one thing in their profile that jumps out, it says they've always said yes when asked. If they haven't given to the foundation yet, there's a good chance they haven't been asked. And we want to take advantage of that. So we've looked at 3 different composite characters, very different from each other, but all good donor prospects. Different gifts, different times, different strategies, different ways, different goals, different places in life, all Rotarians, all potentials for us to invite to join in the work of the Rotary Foundation with us. So we could look at composites all day long, but we have a time constraint. And so those were the 3 I've put together for us to hopefully, as Paula said, get some people on your radar screen from your own world, get some strategy ideas, some gift ideas, get us thinking outside the obvious, not writing people off because we prematurely judge them, but invite conversation. And that moves us to our action steps today, which is for each of us to work on putting together our own list of 3 to 5 names. Now, I always say 3 to 5 names, and somebody will come back and say, well, I want to put down 50 names or 100 names or 30 names. What I'm going to suggest is that we only put down 3 to 5. And when you're done with those 3 to 5, then go ahead and add more to it. What we have found over the years is that if we put down more than 3 to 5, we never really get started on it. But if we only put down 3 to 5 at once and work at them, the actions get taken more. So to save Bernie from having an Excel spreadsheet of 1 million people that's hard to manage, let's go ahead and just select 3 to 5. And if you have 2, that's okay. If you have 6, that's okay. But you know, a handful that you actually have the bandwidth and time to reach out to and have conversations with and talk to. And think about that. You don't have to do it today. Some of you might already have your list. If so, shoot it to Bernie. Others of you might take a day to sleep on it. That's okay too. But maybe by this time next week, have your names to Bernie. He will then clearinghouse them. Again, if you have a particular situation where you have someone you don't want to put on the list, or for whatever reason you need to talk about that personally, you can reach out to me, or you can reach out to Bernie and we can talk about those uniquely one-on-one. The only people who will see that list will be Bernie and I. Bernie will then make sure there's no duplicates on it. If there are, he'll reach out to you and get that worked out amongst you in the best way. And then we'll send out an email link for each of you to schedule a time with me to talk personally. And that's when we can talk about your own goals, your own gift, and also a strategy for the 3 to 5 people that you have identified. And I will work with you to support you in your work with them any way we can, as best we can, one-on-one. Any questions about that?
Carl, I have one. So I feel like some of us might be putting down the same names in our area. So
Right.
is it best for the one person, or is it, if there's 3 people who know them, would it be 3 reach outs? Or how do you propose if there's a mutual person?
Yeah, great question. What we have generally done in the past is that we would reach out to all of the people who put that person down and have a joint conversation and decide amongst ourselves who might be best. And sometimes that might be, well, I have 10 people and you only have 2, so you take them because I've got, 9 others I could use. And other people, well, you figure out, well, I also go to church. I golf with them every Thursday. Well, that's probably better than me, who would have to make a special appointment to see him. And we try to work that out with the metric of what's best for the donor. Because as we said in slide 1 or session 1, Paul Rosso said that solicitation is the right person asking for the right gift at the right time in the right way. And we want to align as many of those rights as possible, starting with the right person. That said, I could foresee a situation where we would say, well, both of you take them out to lunch or something like that. Nothing wrong with that either, if that's what's right. Okay, if there are no other questions about our processes going forward, I wanted to use the last few minutes of our time together this morning to ask if anyone had ideas. When we concluded our session last week, we said that this is new for us. We've never done this during a pandemic before, where we had social distancing rules. And we said, let's think if there's any creative ways for us to do this work during a pandemic, since we can't meet in person. And I see 2 hands there, Lou and Ann. So Lou, go ahead.
Oh, ladies first. Go ahead, Ann.
Ann, go ahead.
I've missed one of the sessions, so what I'm going to say may not be pertinent. You may have covered it, but listening this morning to everybody, I think everybody needs to be well versed in the focused areas. You have brought that up this morning 2 or 3 times, and with all 3 of these people that you brought before us, I can see where we can move in on a focused area. And I believe we need to be knowledgeable of those focused areas. Just like that 40-year-old gentleman, he talked about his environment, the community and so forth. We've got a perfect area, focused area for him to work in. And I think our people need to really know what the foundation is, what it's doing, what it has done, what its potential can be. You will recall, Carl, what I did back in November, not bragging, but when you know the foundation, you know what it's done, what it's capable of doing, and you speak from the heart to these people, I promise you the money will come forward. So the one thing I see, and I want to emphasize, is we really need to know the foundation. Those are my thoughts.
Thank you, Ann. You are right. And it gets that analogy I used about inviting our friends to dinner at the restaurant. We have to know the menu of the restaurant. We don't want to invite the vegetarian friend to the steakhouse. And just like we have to learn what our friends want to do, we have to learn what the Rotary Foundation does do. And I think we have a recorded video of that in session 1. And so if somebody, the beautiful thing about doing this online is we've got recordings of it. And so if before you meet with somebody, you want to go back and watch a portion of that YouTube video where we go through the areas of focus, that's great. Also, there are other resources too beyond that. The Rotary Foundation's webpage has some great information and videos about the different areas of focus. And that could be something that we share with donors or use ourselves to get educated, because Ann, you're right. We want to know what the Rotary Foundation menu of options are so that we're inviting the right person to eat the right thing. Good point. Lou?
Yeah, I wanted to go back to session 1 as well, because we were coming up with some ideas at that point. And one of the things that we mentioned was perhaps you and Bernie putting together a sample PowerPoint on the gift giving options particularly for use at a club. So I'm thinking we have two different ways to approach this. One, we get our list of 3 to 5, we vet those people, and then we have those one-on-one conversations. That's very important, but that's only 3 to 5 people. If we have a sort of a very focused PowerPoint that gives us the gift giving options, particularly as it relates to the $1 Million Dinner, a presentation to a club might bring out 2 or 3 people we never thought about that might be really good candidates for this. But
I like that.
that's work for you and Bernie.
Well,
Lou,
I
thank you. Thank you.
Well-
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Well, I like that too, because as we talked earlier, we don't have avenues into every club. We know the clubs that we know, but we don't know the clubs that we don't know. So if we could have a generic club presentation, that might be an avenue into those clubs.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that's a good idea. And I know last week I mentioned that I could also speak at clubs as a program, and several people said they were going to, take me up on that. So that offer still stands. So please get in touch with me on email. And Bernie, you and I, we got a lot of homework to do for this thing. Let's add this to our homework list and work on that. I like that idea.
Yeah, it's already on there, Carl.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I did mention the last time that we will be having a weekly district all clubs meeting for the whole year. So we can have you on a couple of times. I mean, if you want to talk about it, let me know when is the best time to have you speak and some topics, 30 minutes max, but still we can have you a couple of times during the year.
Let me just say, going forward, just some of the things that I'm visioning anyway, addressing what you all are saying. Once the training is done, which is really today, and we're going to probably ease into other things with trying to get prospects and things, but from a district and a club standpoint, I put together, and I showed this at PETS. We really announced this whole $1 million thing at PETS. And I had a PowerPoint that did that. And I talked about the team, all of you. And so I have a document, which I think all of you have more or less signed off on, that has your picture and contact information. I'm going to go live with that probably in the next week or two. And I'm going to do that via an email to all the president-elects, Pauline's presidents coming up this year, and the foundation chairs in the clubs. So they're going to get that information. They're going to have all your information. And hopefully I'm going to encourage them to contact you on anything foundation related like this, like major gifts, or you need more information. The other thing is I also have a list of speakers. And I think this addresses a little bit of what Ann was talking about. These speakers on the foundation are people that have been there and done that. They've gone and done the grants. They've traveled. They've done these projects. They're very motivational speakers, and they bring the messages. And we need to get those people at the clubs. We need the clubs to hear these people tell their story. There's so many out there at the clubs that don't know what our foundation really does. So this is a great way to reach that. So all that information is going to be coming out also. Pauline, we will take advantage of your Wednesday, meetings. We're definitely going to do that. And Lou, that we will have a PowerPoint that everybody can use. We need to get the information to get invited into the clubs. So I would encourage all of you to find out who the AG is in your area, kind of work with them, let them know what we're doing and the resources that are available to them so that they can get to their clubs also. And let's kind of get the word out. So it's a plan. Carl and I will get some more specifics. And he did mention about these phone calls. I mean, to be honest with you, I was amazed when we talked and he said he's going to call everybody individually and talk to them. I was truly amazed. He said, well, under different circumstances, he would be traveling, speaking to y'all in person.
Right.
But that's like off the table. So we do have to rethink a lot of the stuff here that going forward. And it is a challenge. I got to tell you, it's a challenge because we need to get out there, but we need to figure out a way if we can't get out there too. So, so all of these suggestions are great. Anybody else? Carl, I didn't want to just steal your thunder here, but
No, you did great, Bernie. And yeah, with the phone calls, rather than me just calling you when you're not prepared to have a conversation, or you calling me while I'm on the phone with someone else and it going to voicemail, Bernie is going to help me with some sort of online computerized scheduling tool where you'll be able to log into that and schedule a time with me. And that way we use our time most efficiently and we can all be prepared for our conversation and don't have to worry about playing phone tag and things like that. But I want to be of help to you as best I can and support you in every way I can. I know normally my normal toolbox involves visiting and one-on-one conversations. And so that since those tools are not in the toolbox now, we're doing the level best to make up for it with the other tools that are there, like this Zoom conversation and our telephone and email and things like that. So I appreciate everyone's grace and flexibility. And I'm really excited about your team. You're doing great stuff. You're a great group. You're in a great place. You're going to really make a difference in the world through this effort. And my excitement level is high. My confidence level is even higher. And my gratitude level for all of you and what you're doing is the highest of all. So thank you very much, and especially for your time and participating in this, my very first ever online taught training.
Good job.
With that, I guess, Bernie, you can we can stop our recording here, and everyone just email your prospect lists to Bernie within the next 7 days, and then we'll be in touch after that with the telephone call scheduling email, and we'll take it from there.
okay. Everybody okay? Or do we have any pending? Oh, Ione, do you have a question?
Yes. What all do you want on the email list? You want name? You want club name?
Name and
Contact
club,
information.
probably. Just name and club.
Okay, just name and name and club.
Carl,
Okay.
does that make sense?
Yes, also, it would be helpful for me if you put down their phone number or an email address so that I can make sure that I have that in our files correctly, because unfortunately there are a lot of people whose contact information is not accurate in our databases. And so if you have DAFDB or you have your own BlackBerry or cell phone records, it's more accurate than what we have in our databases. This could be an opportunity for us to get our contact.
Okay. Okay. Anybody else? Okay. Carl, thank you for these sessions. You truly are amazing.
Yes.
You really are. Let's give Carl he's done an amazing
Yay.
job.
Thank you
We
very
are
Yay,
much. You
Carl.
are amazing ones.
We are so lucky to have him as a resource. I mean, he is by the way, his title is Senior Major Gifts Officer, and that's for a reason, because he really is. He's excellent. So,
He is.
so we are so fortunate to have you with us. So thank you very much. And thank you everybody here for agreeing to work this team thing. I think we're going to have, it's going to be a good thing. I think we're going to make some good contacts, make some new friends, have some fellowship along the way. I think it's all going to be good. So I'm getting ready to end this session, and I'm going to stop recording, and thank you again. And I'll be in contact, email me, and we'll see everybody on the other side. Okay. And I'm going to end right